Good morning, everyone. Welcome back. It is FBC Radio Live. It's Thursday. We are getting close to wrapping up the week. We kick off week 4 tonight in the NFL. But, John, that's not where we're going to start because we got a big trade in the NBA, John. That's right. Damian Lillard finally got moved, and much to the enjoyment of everyone but Miami Heat fans, he did not go to Miami. I think even other fans in the East who were kind of tired of this Heat, quote unquote, Heat culture, John, I think we're at least somewhat, enjoying the fact that he didn't go to Miami. Now, the fact that he went to Milwaukee, that's a whole nother issue that we're going to discuss here right now. But surprised that this happened yesterday and surprised that he went to Milwaukee.
Not surprised that it happened yesterday. We knew it would probably get done by Monday. That's when training camp opens, so you want to make this deal so you get back players for Dame Lillard. And in Portland's case, they may actually take Drew Holiday and flip him for draft picks as they're in a total rebuild. Surprising that it was Milwaukee for sure, because all we heard about all summer was Miami. We also heard a little bit last week about Toronto. But Milwaukee did what they had to do to appease their superstar player, Giannis, at the Antetokounmpo, because he was putting out some smoke signals that he wasn't necessarily happy, that they needed to improve the team. And look, Milwaukee's not a free agent destination. They got fortunate to draft him in 2013. So they've had a nice run with Giannis. You want to keep him as long as you can. So they went out and got Dame Lillard, who I believe a year ago in a GQ article it said that if he could play with any player in the league, it would be Giannis. So he now has his wish. And they're going to be tough to beat because that combo, I think, fits really nicely together.
Yeah, it's only a free agent destination for Giannis's brothers. That's about it. So, but yeah, no, and I'm glad you brought that up because I said this to someone yesterday when they called me very excitedly. They're Milwaukee Bucks fan, of course, very excitedly about the deal. And my first thing was, well, this has probably a lot to do with what Giannis said, a couple weeks ago now or whenever it was, where like you said, he kind of really put a lot of doubt into what his future might be and this, that, and the other. And if you're Milwaukee, you're probably saying, well, this is probably the greatest player we're ever going to have in our franchise history. He's already helped win a NBA title. You cannot let this guy walk away from this franchise. So what do? Well, you go out and get a superstar player and really kind of pull the rug out from one of your biggest rival. I mean, them and Boston are Miami. I'm talking about Miami and Boston are probably your two biggest rivalries in that conference right now. So not only do you acquire a great player, but you take that away from a team that kind of was coasting through this offseason, kind of assuming that Damian Lillard was eventually going to be playing with Jimmy Butler. So, yeah, a win-win for Milwaukee here.
Yeah, without question. And you look at Miami, and I think Milwaukee and Boston are both better. I thought they were better last year. They had the two best records in basketball. Milwaukee won 59 games. Celtics won 58. And somehow Miami beat both of those teams. The last 4 years, Miami's 2-1 in the playoffs against Milwaukee, 2-1 in the playoffs against the Celtics. My hot take here on September 28th, we're, less than a month away from the start of the season. I don't think the Miami Heat even get out of the first round of the playoffs this year. They're old. They had a great run last year, but I look at teams in the Eastern Conference, certainly Milwaukee and Boston being better. I think Philadelphia, because Joel Embiid is such a monster that at least in the regular season, they're difficult to deal with. We'll see what happens with James Harden. I think Cleveland is a young team that's going to improve. I think Miami could get bounced in the first round of the playoffs because, again, this is an old team, a team that has to fight injuries year in and year out. And as we said, for most of last year, Milwaukee and Boston appear to be the two best teams. Unfortunately, they didn't meet the conference finals because Miami beat both of them. But, yeah, this is a great move for the Milwaukee Bucks, getting a player like Damian Lillard, who, by the way, look, I might be the only person in the country. I think while Lillard is a phenomenal player, I do think he's slightly overrated. I think, again, phenomenal player. The reason I think he's slightly overrated is he made it onto the 75th anniversary team as one of the 75 greatest players in league history, which I don't think he is. People talk about his closing skills. I mean, the biggest series he ever played in, he got swept by Golden State, and Golden State was dealing with some injuries, and he was god-awful in that series. So, again, I hold back that he's this incredible closer that people talk about. But, look, playing with Giannis, that is going to be a lethal combination because I think they complement each other really well.
Well, and here's the thing: it doesn't come without sacrifice. Milwaukee didn't really have a great bench to begin with, and they have less of a bench now. Now, obviously, your front end talent is far better, and you're going to be hard pressed to find a duo that's incredibly better than what you have here. But it's like someone said on Twitter, it's like the Celtics are just happy that Drew Holiday is no longer with the Bucks. I mean, that's kind of a win for the Celtics, no?
Yeah, he's an outstanding player. I mean, he's a much better version of what Marcus Smart's been. I mean, he's
Mm-hmm.
even a better defender than Marcus Smart, much better offensive player. I always compared him to Dennis Johnson, who's a Hall of Famer who had a great run with the Celtics, Suns, and Supersonics. You know, that's high compliment for me. DJ was one of my favorite
Mm-hmm.
players. And, you know, yeah, so you lose him. He's part of your championship DNA. And now Portland's going to most likely flip him. But I think what Milwaukee will do, you still have Bobby Portis, you still have Brook Lopez. Again, older guys that are somewhat beat up. You've got Chris Middleton is probably the X factor of the team, and it's always
Yeah.
the case, right? When you try to build a team, like the third best player, are they going to step up? I know when Miami had the big three, it was always okay. Is Chris Bosh going to step up? We know LeBron and Dwayne Wade are awesome. Is Chris Bosh going to be good enough? Chris Middleton becomes the X factor. He's going to get a lot of opportunities, Ian,
Mm-hmm.
with some easy shots because Lillard and Giannis are going to draw so much attention. The problem with Middleton the last year and a half, he's not been healthy. If he's
Right.
healthy and playing at a high level, that's a great number three guy on your roster. So, yeah, they're not as deep as they would like to be, but you can always add pieces as the season goes on in the buyout market, make trades. And look, Milwaukee appears to be all in, as we
Yeah.
use that phrase, because I don't know the next time they have a first round pick because they've traded them all away. First for Drew Holiday 3 years ago, and then again yesterday to get Damian Lillard.
Well, and again, I mean, it's the right move you have to make. I mean, for if you're the Bucks,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, again, like I said, this is the greatest player in your franchise history, and he's
Well, Kareem's the greatest player in franchise history.
yeah, you're right. You're right.
Modern history.
Modern
Well,
history. That's
modern history.
yeah.
Yeah. But Kareem only was there for 6 years, I believe. And then at that point, he was like, get me out of Milwaukee and send me to LA or New York.
Right. So that's why, yeah,
California.
that's where it's like you almost like I say, that's why you always, when you think about Kareem, you generally
You think of him as a Laker.
yeah, exactly. So
Yep.
modern history, certainly one that could potentially play their entire career with the franchise. Let's put it that way. You're not going to just let that go away, and because again, like you said, where are they going to replenish? Where are they going to restock in the near future if he were to leave or whatever? And this kind of ensures that he doesn't. Now, again, I mean, this could end up being a disaster, John. We know this. Like, these things don't, this doesn't mean or guarantee anything in the NBA. I know, there's a few instances where these super combos or super teams were successful, but I think we talked about this a while back. Like, the vast majority of the time, they're not necessarily that successful. I mean, we think about the Celtics and the Heat. That's I mean, in Golden State, like, look, the majority of their team was homegrown. I mean, you had Kevin Durant, and okay, they win a championship, but how many other attempts have there been to combine big name players, and have it fail miserably?
It failed mostly because of James Harden and Kyrie Irving.
Yeah,
Like,
that's
they seem
true.
to be the two
Yeah,
players that are involved with so many of these mechanisms, right? I mean,
yeah, that's funny
Kyrie
how that works.
coming to the Celtics and then going to Brooklyn, and we'll see what happens in Dallas. It didn't work out for the final 2 months that he and Luka Doncic was playing together. And then James Harden, everywhere he goes, kind of things implode, including Philadelphia, where they underachieved in the postseason. So you look at those two guys. I think these guys are going to fit really well because, again, Lillard is a great lead guard, tremendous scorer and shooter. A lot of the athletic point guards that kind of peter out at the end of their careers aren't great shooters like Damian Lillard. Like, think Derrick Rose, Russell Westbrook, John Wall, Allen Iverson, players like that were phenomenal athletes, which Lillard is. But Lillard's a much better shooter than those guys, so he can transition into 33, 34, 35 years old and be a three-point shooter, which he is already. He might be the second best deep shooter in the league behind only Steph Curry. I mean, again, like Steph Curry, you have to pick him up past half court because he's taking logo threes and hitting them. So I think it's going to work well because Giannis is a player who is best served scoring inside. Maybe you take a little bit off play two. He doesn't have to initiate the offense. Lillard can do a lot of that as well. I think this one's going to work. And again, I think they kind of want to play with each other, which we saw with Harden and Durant and Kyrie. But these guys seem a little bit more mature. Is that a word I can use?
Sure.
In more so than those guys. I mean, Durant to me is a phenomenal player and just kind of likes to be left alone. I mean, Kyrie Irving and James Harden seem to like they could screw up a free lunch.
Right. Yeah, and look, I mean, I'm with you. I think it's going to work too. I just caution everyone punching their ticket. I mean, the good thing for them is it's we would have probably thought of them in Boston as the two favorites before this. It's not like this drastically changes your expectations for the Bucks. No, it kind of only further cements your expectations for the Bucks and what they could do. So maybe we didn't get it last year, but maybe we get that Celtics Bucks NBA Eastern Conference final. So we'll see. We'll see. Anyways, we're gonna stick. It's a Milwaukee themed show today, apparently. Just so happens to be the case because Thursday Night Football, we got the Packers and we got the Lions, John. And well, if any indication from if there's any indication from the Bears and Packers game, regardless of who's under center, it's going to be the same old outcome. The Packers versus the Lions, the Packers versus the Bears. It's just chalk it up as a victory for the Packers 99 out of 100 times. And quite frankly, I don't know what Lions team is going to show up today. I really don't, because we've seen them beat the Chiefs. We've seen them fall flat, and then we've seen them look really good in week 3. So, John, this is Jordan Love's getting his first taste of the Bears and the Lions, two teams that Aaron Rodgers feasted on for many a year. How are you going to judge this? Do you give the Lions? Are you still high enough on the Lions to say, they are you still on them?
Oh, sure. Well, the thing is, too, the last 5 years, actually, the Lions have been competitive with the Packers.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Head matchup. Somehow, I mean, I think they beat them twice last year, kept the Packers out of the playoffs. They always seem to play them tough. Even when Matt Patricia was there, I just remember every game coming down to like a game-winning field goal for the Packers. Now, in most cases, they won, but it was always kind of some sort of slog.
Mm-hmm.
The Packers with the Lions recently felt a little bit like the Patriots and the Dolphins.
Yeah,
a little bit. Yeah, like the Packers didn't play well in Detroit, and Rodgers, I think, suffered a concussion there once and had Ndamukong Suh stepping on his calf at some point, and maybe that was the precursor to the Achilles injury, a decade ago. But
by the way, I heard Joe Burrow's seeking calf advice from Aaron Rodgers, and
you go.
Well, here's the thing: I've been trying all morning to figure out, come up with an example of someone seeking the advice of someone who knows absolutely nothing about what they're seeking. Because, like, if there's anyone that I'm not going to go to advice about healing a calf injury, it's probably the guy who just blew out his, Achilles 3 weeks ago. So, Joe, please.
Your younger brother, Joe, you have to get in touch with him. You
go
look like him and sound like him.
Seek someone with a medical degree, not one from, a mystical science department,
University.
Yeah.
We're going to go to Joe Rogan University.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens with that.
I'm
kind of hoping that my request.
That was my favorite kind of nickname for Aaron Rodgers that came out last year was Toe Rogan. I just
Toe Rogan, that's great. Yeah, that's great.
I don't know why. I thought it was so funny. But anyways, go ahead.
That was a good one.
Ahead.
My advice to Aaron Rodgers too is like get back to the East Coast and be with your team, because your teammates and your coaches.
Oh, they're imploding.
You are. Well, they look at Aaron Rodgers, the rest of the players and the coaching staff, as Jesus and cleats. I mean, they adore this guy. And maybe if he's around, maybe Zach Wilson play a little bit better. This is Zach Wilson's idol, literally his idol growing up. So maybe we'll comfort Zach Wilson as he tries to learn how to play the position. I remember a couple of days ago, I think I tweeted out to you that I look at Zach Wilson as the same guy as Milos, the tennis instructor in Seinfeld. Yeah. Remember the episode where Jerry was taking tennis lessons? Milos was the tennis instructor who was wearing like perfect tennis outfit, had the $500 racket, and was god awful. Like, you looked at him and go, "Oh, this guy looks like a tennis pro," right? And then he couldn't hit the ball. It's kind of like Zach Wilson. You look at him and go, "This guy looks like a quarterback." I mean, look at the way he moves his arm, and he can't play the position. But I think Aaron Rodgers got it back to the East Coast to help out his team. But back in terms of tonight's game, I went off the rails there, and I apologize. But Yeah, Detroit. This is a tough game because this is a huge game, right, Ian?
Yeah.
Because the Vikings are 0-3, the Bears are 0-3. It's going to most likely be Lions Packers to decide this division. If the Lions win this one, they'll be 3-1. They would have won at Arrowhead, at Lambeau, and they hold the tiebreakers against the Packers at that point, and then they host them later in the season. They would become a solid favorite to win the North. So, yeah, I think the Lions, they slipped up against Seattle, but I think Seattle's a good team. And then they had a good defensive effort against Atlanta in week 3, which was kind of a surprise. You thought there would be a higher scoring game. But I think the Lions will find a way to win tonight. I just think they're slightly better on offense, more weapons on offense. And the Packers defense to me still mystifies me with all those first round picks. They get 8 first round picks on that defense and they still can't get it right. I'm not sure what the problem is there.
Well, and that, again, that just speaks to how talent doesn't necessarily mean much.
True.
In the big picture, because you can have all the best pieces, but if they don't fit together, I mean, it's not gonna it's not gonna function. So
yep.
And that's why and I hate to bring it back to Zach Wilson, but that's one of the things that's why, like, you get so many disappointments like that, because he looked the part, he has the talent, the arm, the aesthetics, everything like that, but what does that really mean when it comes to quarterbacking? Nothing. So and look, fans do it and you can excuse it, but when you have football professionals, quote unquote, now again, there's some obviously great football minds out there, but there's some in this business that it's not they're not a far cry from the armchair GMs that you see on Twitter. So, like, it's not above them to buy into hype and things that don't necessarily matter. Like, obviously, if there was a formula to how to evaluate a quarterback and know exactly what they're going to do, Tom Brady would have never went in the 6th round. We know that,
exactly.
Obviously.
Yeah. So,
and again, we were talking a little bit off the air, and someone had posted a video of one of his college games from 1998. Comeback, incredible comeback drive, all that stuff. I mean, just typical Tom Brady stuff, but like we look back at it now and it's so incredibly obvious, because he follows up that season by beating Alabama the next year in his college, finale, and he somehow gets overlooked. And again, what were people enamored with, even at Michigan? Talent, quote unquote. And people use the word talent and athleticism. And again, to me, it doesn't necessarily apply to quarterback play, because everyone was enamored with Drew Henson because he had talent. He was going to go pitch for the Yankees. He had this golden arm, blah, 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 blah. Guess who was a better quarterback? Guess who continually got their asses out of the fire because, well, they had this weird split going on for a while there at Michigan. Either way, it's this whole discussion, kind of the big picture is talent doesn't necessarily translate to success. And we can see that individually, and we can see that as a whole, as a team, because to your point, Green Bay's had a lot of talent on defense. There's a lot of players on that team that other teams would jump at the opportunity to add and would look at it as a significant addition. But the problem is, collectively, they just haven't put it together enough. Like, they've been pretty good. I mean, this isn't a horrible defense. That they just don't seem to make enough plays in the biggest moments.
They have a shutdown corner in Jair Alexander. They have an elite edge rusher in Rashawn Gary. You've got an outstanding interior defensive lineman in Kenny Clark. I mean, those 3 pieces alone should make you a good defense. And it just was always frustrating to watch them play this kind of a passive approach on defense. I mean, even last year's final game against Detroit, Detroit's going on 4th and 2, and they picked it up so easily because the coverage was soft. And then you'd hear Matt LaFleur, the head coach, after the game go, "I don't know why we were in soft coverage." Well, you're the head coach.
Yeah.
Speak up. That I've always wondered why. What are you doing? Are you just coaching the offense and trying to get the crowd involved in the game the rest of the way? So, yeah, 8 first-round picks, and it just doesn't seem to work. You know who had a similar collegiate trajectory as Tom Brady was actually Joe Montana. I remember when he was at Notre Dame, at times he was pulled out of the lineup, put back in, and then he'd have these miraculous comebacks. The Cotton Bowl, I think in 1979, he brought Notre Dame back against the University of Houston from like a 18-point deficit in the final 7 minutes, like same type of thing. And then he went in the 3rd round. There were other quarterbacks drafted well ahead of Joe Montana in 1979, Phil Simms, Jack Clemson, the throwing Samoan, went third that year. And people are probably saying, who? Well, he didn't play much. But yeah, the same type of thing as Brady. They were kind of always overlooked and always had to prove themselves even in college.
Yeah, and like, look, so it just goes to show that the obsession with I don't want to call it vague, definite, like vague description of talent, but that's what it's kind of turned into because talent, like more often than not, people can't necessarily define it, and that kind of again speaks to, well, what does it really mean then? And people get enamored with the talent and like, oh my god, talent this, talent that, but they overlook. And look, it's not easy. I mean, I think the quarterback position, outside of a hockey goalie, of course, no bias there whatsoever, is the most complicated, most prestigious position in all of sports. But seriously,
Wow.
I do believe that.
You're right, though.
But
in terms of mental makeup is essential in those two positions.
And it's like people are like, well, football is the ultimate team sport. Well, that's why they call it a team sport. I mean, duh. Like I hate that response. Well, this only kind of further cements like the quarterback's importance because of how much impact an individual has on a team game. Like there's no other player in any other sport outside of, again, in a kind of serious note, a hockey goalie can have a lot of control one way or the other outside of his surroundings, because a team could play terrible, but if you have a goalie that's standing on his head and making miraculous saves, that bad team could still win a game against a much better team, superior team. So it's not out of the realm of possibility. In the case of football, though, there's more of that control on a game-to-game basis. In fact, I believe it's in their control in every game basis, because their play directly impacts, obviously, the offense, but also the defense. Because, well, guess what? If you're a bad quarterback, your defense is going to be playing with one hand behind their back. I mean, it's just it's
Zach Wilson.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
That Jets defense is playing with a lot of pressure. They can't make a mistake. Like, everyone's getting on them for giving up 13 points. I know they gave up 15, but 2 attributed to Zach Wilson. So they gave up 13 points. They had the one malfunction where it was blown coverage, which led to the Patriots touchdown, and it was on the Jets defense. Well, they still only gave up 13 points. You should win in the NFL if you give up 13 points, but when your quarterback can only reach 10, you're not going to win many of any games. And like the whole attitude of the team has changed because of the quarterback. Like that, obviously they don't like the kid. He can't play. He doesn't know how to play the position. So they're going into games going, hey, we could have a great game defensively. We could run the football, and this clown is going to cause us a chance to win the game because he just can't make plays. So that's obviously setting a bad mood for that particular team.
And look, I mean, this isn't a team that apparently, and again, if you believe kind of the rumblings that are coming out that people are frustrated. I mean, obviously we know, and Braden mentioned it earlier, Joe Namath is frustrated. He's been very vocal about his views about the quarterback situation. But like, look, if it wouldn't surprise me if that same sentiment wasn't shared among active players in that locker room. And that's a problem because the Jets don't have a team that can overcome this type of dissension and tension. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, Braden brings up a great point. They wore Mike White t-shirts last year, and everyone decided over the offseason, like, oh, yeah, that's fine. No one cares about that anymore. Well, guess what? You assumed Aaron Rodgers was going to be under center. Now, all of a sudden, he's back under, Zach Wilson is back under center, and there you go. It's right back to where they were. So this, like I said, that's why I said earlier, this is kind of teetering on a disaster. And to your point, Aaron Rodgers could be the calming voice in all of this, just his presence alone. And trust me, I'm not trying to prop him up, but again, he has the status. He has a Super Bowl, and the team was tied to his arrival. I mean, that's really what it was. And I think just having him around should help. But ultimately, John, performance matters, and I'm with you. I don't think he's ever going to figure it out, and to me that means the Jets are kind of torpedoing towards a 3-win season maybe.
Well, yeah, I mean, look at the draft of 2021, right? So we had 5 quarterbacks drafted in the top 15, and quarterbacks get overdrafted. We get that, but look at the players in that draft
is overrated.
You could have had exactly. Yeah, I mean, it's like, this guy's a good-looking guy. He must be a great actor. Well, the problem is he can't act, right? So that's not the profession you choose. So you look at the players in that draft that have just been phenomenal. And this is only their third year, right? Jamar Chase, Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, elite wide receivers. Penei Sewell's one of the best left tackles in football. And oh, by the way, Micah Parsons might be the best player in football. Those five guys win the top 11 of the NFL draft in 2021, and teams overreach for quarterbacks. I mean, just think Micah Parsons on San Francisco or on the Jets or on anyone. Those teams had an opportunity to take him, and they passed and took quarterbacks, and they're paying for it right now. And look at the Jets. Well, 3 years before that, they drafted Sam Darnold, and then after 3 years, they moved on from him. Think of the draft capital they've used to draft quarterbacks that can't play.
Yeah. Well, again, like I said, I mean, it's a hard position to evaluate, especially coming out of college because, well, yeah, sure, Zach Wilson looks good in college. Well, have you seen some of the matchups in college? Like, yeah, you get your premier matchups, but for the most part, it's not necessarily I don't want to say it's not a level playing field, but there's some there's far bigger gaps between teams, obviously in college football than there are in the NFL. The very best team versus the very worst team. I mean, we just got our first 70-point game in 60 years. And how many times do we see that in college? A lot.
Oh, man, yeah.
Relatively a lot.
Many times. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So anyways, it's that's why, again, I mean, it's a hard position to evaluate and get right, especially coming out of college. And I think obviously the Jets are more familiar with that sentiment than anyone, than most. So all right, we'll snap back to actual Thursday night football and say, okay, are you picking the Packers or are you picking the Bears or Lions?
I'm gonna go with the Lions. Oh my! I mean, what great nicknames in that division though? Bears, Lions, Vikings, and Packers. Packers is a pretty cool, the meat Packers.
Yeah.
I'm going with the Lions though tonight. I think they're a better team.
Yeah, look, I mean, I can't necessarily fault you there. I mean, the Jordan Love start to the season has been nice, and it's very, it's fun to watch him play and evolve and see what he can do, going forward now as the guy. Is he going to be, the third quarterback that just handles the reins for Green Bay for a decade plus? Who knows? We're going to find out. But yeah, I do like the Lions in this one. I think the Lions, it's crazy to say, but I think the Lions need this game more than the Packers because I think that there's going to be pressure on the Lions all season because of the expectations. And I don't think they're going to have to pass those tests. You know what I mean? Like, does it make sense? Like, I think this is a much bigger game for the Lions, even though, I mean, the Lions, even if they lost, they'd still be in a pretty good position to overcome that down the line. It's just go out and take care of business, get those big wins early and kind of build that foundation. Don't try to kind of make up ground at the end of the year like they generally do. So anyway, so I got the Lions, you got the Lions, which means obviously the Packers are going to win by 30 tonight. And we're going to come in tomorrow with our heads hung low. So that's going to do it for us here today. Like I said, we will be back tomorrow and we will obviously recap Thursday night football. We will discuss any sort of Miami accusations of tampering. And of course, we will preview the rest of week 4 in the NFL. So thank you everyone for tuning in and we'll talk to you then.